Welcome to SoTL Psych Sessions, where we bring you the best and the latest in scholarship of teaching and learning from the voices of the researchers themselves. And now, let's join the host of SoTL Psych Sessions, Anna Ropp.
Hello, I'm sitting here with Kari Alvarez and Melanie Dominic Rodriguez from Utah State University. Hi, Kari. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Anna.
Hi. Could you tell us just a little bit about yourself for our listeners?
Kari, go ahead. You're the first author.
Okay. So I am Kari Alvarez, longer name Maria de la Caridad, but I'll spare from that. And I am a doctoral student at Utah State University in the Combined Clinical Counseling Program. I previously come from a master's in adult education and human resource development, and my research centers around multicultural courses and multicultural competence, and how these can be taught, developed, and evaluated through an online format.
That's great to have you here, Kari.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Melanie, do you mind saying a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I am a professor in the Department of Psychology at Utah State University. I've been very fortunate to spend my 20-year career at Utah State. It has allowed me to build a community of collaborators and scholars that has advanced multicultural work at a lot of different levels in parenting and teaching and ethics, in substance use prevention, across a whole host of areas.
That's great. I'm so glad that both of you are here to talk to me today. So for our listeners, I am going to be talking to Kari and Melanie about their research about multicultural psychology, looking at some comparisons between online and face-to-face. And I've told the two of you that, and I've said it in other shows, that I am teaching online for the very first time in the fall, fully online. So I'm really interested in this idea about effective teaching online, especially for classes like multicultural psychology. So you have a recent research article in Translational Issues in Psychological Science. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
So this project started as an idea for my thesis project, and Melanie had been teaching the course in person for quite a bit, and some previous lab members have done research showing that the course was effective in changing attitudes. Coming from doing a lot of my undergraduate and some of my master's online, I was really interested in seeing how the two modalities compared when the purpose wasn't just to transfer knowledge, but there was also a component in trying to shift attitudes. And so that's how we sort of came up with the idea, and we made an effort to keep the instructor, which was Melanie, constant. So we compared some of her classes online and face-to-face and see if the modalities were comparable. And so we collected the data and ran the study and found out that the classes were indeed comparable, and you could achieve changes in attitudes in both online and in person. However, there was a significant interaction by modality, where although the two classes achieved changes, those that were in person changed at, quicker or more significant rates. There was a greater degree in the level of change for them.
Yeah. But it's really interesting to note that you still have some attitude changes online, which I think is for me going into classes that are fully online, it's kind of reassuring.
Yeah, one of the interesting things in this process, and one of the reasons why I love so much working in teams, and my research lab is my collaborator team, is that, I came at this from a very different perspective. I'd been teaching for 15 years, and the online conversation had been breached by my department head at the time. And I was really resisting the idea of teaching online. I knew how to teach in person. I had this down, and I didn't need to switch online. And through a process of a fairly deep consideration of social justice issues and how they might play out in the decisions that I was making to teach in person or online, and how they fit conceptually with what I was trying to teach my students, I had to move to online teaching, because one of the things that we see in online teaching is that those courses, at least at my institution, are taught by adjunct faculty or temporary faculty or graduate students, because faculty like me like to teach the courses on campus. And what it creates is a systematic disparity between the students that are taking their courses online and the students that are taking their courses on campus. And I don't want to disparage any of the folks that teach courses online. I'm not wanting to say that adjuncts provide poor teaching, but the institutional memory that I hold and my longevity at the institution and with this particular subject matter put me in a very different context to teach the class. And it was an access that students that were coming to online learning didn't have and don't often have. And it was so refreshing and so fantastic to partner up with Kari, who is not just fearless, but passionate about bridging those gaps in educational inequities.
I think that's amazing. I mean, in our department, we actually have a lot of full-time people that teach online, so I hadn't realized that or thought about that is an issue in terms of equity. But I have heard, some people can access online classes much easier than others. So, making sure that our online classes, are comparable in many ways, that there's not, two tiers of students or two tiers of faculty can be really important. Yeah. And Kari, I'm really interested in this. You're a doctoral student and you're the first author on this paper. I'll just tell you, when I was a doctoral student, I had no idea there was this area of research that was called scholarship of teaching and learning. So, I think that you have a lot of advantages getting the training that you are getting. Could you tell us a little bit about being a student and doing this kind of research?
Yeah, definitely. So I have been so fortunate to be able to work with an advisor, Melanie, who is not only supportive, but encouraging of my interests. And so I come from taking a lot of online classes due to structural challenges, like having to work full time or not being able to make it to campus and living far away from campus, and the restrictions of time and date that face-to-face classes provide really extend the time that students need to be in school, aggravating the end cost of your total education. And so this was something that, like she mentioned, I was really passionate about. And so being able to not only evaluate the course, but also have the experience of teaching it. I think 2 of the semesters that were compared online, I was Melanie's TA. And through that process, I was being prepared to teach the course. And so really learning firsthand and having such a great understanding of the data, because in a sense, I was helping create it. All the activities that we did in the class, I had a hand in evaluating and grading, monitoring those discussions, and really adhering to the Tripartite model, which is what we used to teach the class and really followed with all of the assignments, really, really helped me get a firsthand experience and be able to understand the data in a much deeper level and be able to advocate for the quality of online classes, because this is something that was already happening. The class was being taught, and I was more interested in evaluating that it was comparable to what the students in person were getting. So just having the opportunity to be so close to the data really helped me analyze it and be able to tell this story.
That's great. So can you tell us a little bit more about the model that you said that you used when you teach online?
Yeah. So the Melanie developed and I don't know if maybe you want to talk about this a bit more, Melanie, how you
Sure.
developed the classes or the assignments to fit the model.
Yeah, I can do that. So I work on cultural competence development across a host of professional areas. And when I was developing the class, actually, I was redeveloping it because I had developed the original version of the class as an early career scholar. And then, of course, fast forward 10 years, you learned a lot. And I scrapped everything that I had and I built from the ground up a course that was based on the tripartite model of cultural competence as articulated by Sue. And so that model specifies the development of self-awareness, knowledge about cultural, other, or cultural concepts, and specific skills in working with other people. And so as I was thinking about, okay, I have a textbook, that textbook is packed with knowledge, right? We have all of our multicultural psychology concepts that we need to teach and that students need to learn to grow in their own cultural competence are in there. So then we have quizzes that test that knowledge. But then we also have to develop self-awareness. How are we going to target that? And how are we going to target specific skills? This is incredibly challenging. And so for self-awareness, we created a series of brief papers that allowed us to give students timely feedback using a Socratic questioning method. So more than challenging or confronting, really asking key questions that would lead students to think about what they had written, connect it to the material in a meaningful way, and grow in their understanding of themselves as people whose culture is informing their understanding of the materials that they are learning about. And then in terms of specific skills, we developed a series of assignments that required contact with culturally diverse others. And so as part of that, students might attend a cultural event. All of this, of course, has been quite complicated by COVID, but we're working on it. We have students go to cultural events, and instead of saying, okay, go to one event or two events, they have to go to 3 events, and then they have to provide a paper discussing what they noticed, right? What impacts to their self-awareness, what did they learn? And then also, what did they try? What did they do when they interacted with folks that were different from them, and how were they successful, and maybe how they were not? And so every assignment in one way or another connects to either developing self-awareness, deepening the knowledge base, or providing an opportunity to exercise some skills that perhaps folks have not attempted before. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense, and I'm in love with it. I mean, I think one thing I will say for the listeners also is those 3 aspects of cultural competence, the self-awareness, knowledge, and skills, are also, in your research, that's where there were improvements, right, for the students.
Yeah, so we tried to match the measures. This was really quite challenging, I have to say. We tried to match the measures to those constructs. So we have courses with teaching evaluations. Were you happy with the course? Okay, that's fine. It doesn't tell me anything about how you grew in the ways that we were hoping to have you grow. And I do need to clarify, we're talking about this in the context of a research paradigm, but these evaluation tools are primarily used as teaching tools. And so students take their time 1, which is their baseline measurements, and we measure colorblind racial ideology, we measure multicultural experiences, ethnocultural
Empathy.
eso, mija, ethnocultural empathy. And what we do with that is we measure it also at the end, and then the students have to look at their scores. We provide them with a report, and so they look at their scores at the outset of the class and at the end of the class, and we ask them, what do these scores mean to you? And how do you understand your change? And so over the course of the class, they learn what colorblindness is, and they learn what ethnocultural empathy is, and they learn about the importance of intercultural contact. So we're having them participate in a process of introspection, in effect, by providing them with measures pre and post. And then our report shows the means and standard deviations for the whole class. So because these are not clinical measures, and there isn't such a thing as enough ethnocultural empathy or insufficient ethnocultural empathy, we have them put their scores in relation to their group and make sense of, where are you at in terms of where you want to be in your development of cultural competence, and where might you go next based on this quantitative information provided here?
Yeah. I mean, I love this in terms of reflection for students and, using data
Mm-hmm.
and using these dimensions of cultural competence. And I think, I think that model would work for a lot of different classes, not just multicultural psychology.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you're saying this, I think I use a lot of this for, I teach classes like psychology of group prejudice and psychology of sexual orientation. And I think, there's often these components of, self-awareness, knowledge, and skills. But, I love the fact that you have that as an explicit part of a multicultural class.
Well, so let me have a proud mentor moment, because what is really cool is we use these data, right? And initially we started doing the analyses and I was just over the moon with the fact that people were moving at all. They were moving in the in-person classes and we continued to gather data. They seemed to be moving online. So when Kari started talking about the online project, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. Like, you can take a look at this and really dig into this and connect it to the literature in ways that I wouldn't be able to, because I didn't bring that experience or expertise. And looking at our findings, Kari actually innovated. And the semester that she taught the course, she added an exercise for difficult dialogues. We had been discussing it as a different way to target skills development, right? How do we get people to be in the same room with different opinions, negotiating a difficult dialogue armed with the knowledge of all of these psychological factors and constructs that play a role in our ability to successfully communicate across perspectives? And she pulled that off. And I think, Kari, you should talk about what that looks like, because that was your baby.
Yeah. I was looking at my data, and what seemed to move in greater quantities for the in-person class was colorblind racial attitudes and empathy. And I went back to the literature and I was looking and wondering, and we had tried very hard in the online class to keep contact with the students and keep the discussions alive and provide extensive feedback. But I felt that something that was missing was the connection with each other. And so the empathy piece, when you are seeing the effect that your words are having on a classmate or on an instructor, because the topics that we're discussing in the class are as you can imagine, sometimes sensitive, sometimes they have become political, but a lot of times they're personal. And this was the case for me, and I felt like that was something that the students were missing. So we created a project where the students were asked to have difficult dialogues with each other. And so tools like Adobe Connect or Zoom meetings were utilized so that the students could share verbally their thoughts, their opinions in a manner that allowed them to practice the skills taught in class and engage with these topics while also getting that immediate feedback from the expressions on their classmates. And so that is currently data that we are chewing on and trying to analyze. We have been collecting data since last summer when we incorporated the project. So the project continues.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love proud mentor moments. And it sounds like she's got a lot to be proud of with you as a student, Kari. And I love this idea because I shared with you before we started recording. One of my hesitations about teaching online is, when you're teaching topics that are related to diversity, how do you get students to a skill where they can talk about it effectively without it degenerating into, what looks like the troll section of an internet comment website? Like how do you do that without, waking up in a cold sweat in the middle of the night, wondering if something's gone wrong? And so I love this idea that you're sort of helping them with skills that are going to be useful for them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead, Kari.
No, I think you were going to talk about that the sessions are moderated.
Oh, yes, please explain that.
So there's a humanistic aspect where I just have faith in humanity, and that can be a little scary. But also the sessions are moderated by either the class instructor or the class TA, to avoid things from, like you said, becoming a troll sesh, or maybe sometimes the minority person in the group can become tokenized, and their voice is burdened by asking them to share more. So we sort of try to balance those conversations out and intervene when necessary. And I think something that is I've learned from Melanie in the parenting aspect is really modeling the behavior. And so we model what we would hope to see throughout the course. And so we know that we're teaching a difficult subject, and we know that opinions are going to vary. And so something that is, I guess for me, a proud mentee and a proud lab collaborator moment is one of my lab mates is using this data, and what we've analyze is that the changes in attitude don't relate to the student's final grade in the class. So all of the assignments, we grade them blindly, and we provide feedback without knowing who the student is. So we really focus on the content and trying to grow the student from where they are without making it a punitive or an environment where they may be sanctioned. And I think that really helps to encourage both transparency and growth.
Yeah. And so if, for example, if a student has a post that you wouldn't approve, then it sounds like you then, I'm reading in, but are you then engaging in this sort of difficult dialogue with them about why it's not approved? And where do you go from there?
Right. So the discussions are, I should have clarified, the instructions, we don't blind those. I don't know that there's a way to do that in Canvas. What we blind grade is their reflections, which are kind of worth more. But I think, Melanie, I had maybe one or two that were slightly maybe difficult to deal with discussions. Maybe you've had more experience with those difficult ones.
Yeah, the discussions this is the monitoring piece that I was mentioning earlier. So the discussion board, we have two sets of dates. So students have to post by, say, Wednesday. And so half of the class posts an original post, and then the other half of the class responds to at least two of those posts. And so we keep a really close eye so that between Wednesday and Friday, we can take a look at all of the posts. And if anything needs to be commented on, we can do that fairly quickly to shape or clarify or whatever is needed. And then the rest of the students come and put their comments in. And we monitor those as well. And we're able to provide comments as we go. The reality is the students are not, in my experience, they're really courteous and kind. I think we had one situation that I can think of, and I think it was with you teaching, Kari, where we actually had to reach out to a student because we were a little bit worried about their safety and their ability to create safety for others in a really fundamental way. But for the most part, students are, if anything, we have to push for them to get deeper in those discussion boards. They tend to go deeper in the individual reflections because it's a way less vulnerable place. And then we're able to have those discussions one-on-one. And then the difficult dialogues, which is, it's a synchronous online meeting that is fully mediated. So then, or moderated, I guess, and the person that is there from the teaching team, and it's typically two people from the teaching team are present, they can handle whatever discussions occur.
It sounds like you two have put together a great class. That even though I've taught multicultural psychology a few times or several times, now I want to take it from you just so that I can learn some of these lovely things that you have modeled so well. And I really appreciate that, you not only put together a great class, but then you've got the research that you put together and then publish so that we all can learn a little bit from that. So yeah, I love that.
And I have to tell you, because you mentioned you were transitioning to online, and maybe this is a bit nerve-wracking, which I can profoundly empathize with. Um, there are two things of online learning that I have appreciated so much. And one of them is online learning, putting this course online pushed me to be very clear about all of my expectations in a way that if I were to teach this course in person again, my in person course would be so much stronger for my having had to be so clear on the online platform to set students up for success, right? That ultimately, as a teacher, that's what I want. I want students signed up for this class. I'm assuming they want to learn, and my job is to set them up for success in that learning process. And teaching online has made me a much better teacher. I have to be much clearer. I can't rely on my good humor and warmth to carry me through fumbling in any way or making mistakes, because students don't really see me. And so that's one thing. And the other piece that is very specific to the multicultural course is it really invites very critical and useful reflective pauses. And for us as a teaching team, what I found was that there was a shift from conversations about, oh my goodness, that thing that happened in class, now how do we do damage control, to, oh wow, I just got this paper. Let's talk through together about how to best address and how to best support the student and seeing the pieces that they need to see so they can grow. And so for us as a teaching team, it has been much more fun to engage the conversation about, okay, here we have this paragraph, and here are some problems that we see. Let's put our heads together. What are the strengths that we see that this person is putting forward? And how can we, from there, bounce over to the piece of feedback that we want them to hear in the most positive, productive, affirming, and sort of growth-oriented manner? That has been a product of teaching online. So for me as an educator to feel like I had such efficacy about teaching and then find myself in this super rich space of growth for having moved to the online platform has been really, really fun.
That's exciting. Yeah, it's been really interesting to teach for so long, and now all of a sudden feel like I'm a newbie. Um, but it's good to know that on the other side of that, I might be increasing my skill absolutely in this area. So, thank you both so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it. For the listeners, I just want to let you know that we will have a link to the article in the show notes. If you're having trouble accessing that article, feel free to contact me. And yeah, thank you so much again.